Welcome to Ukraine Britain Business Council and Bridge Ukraine's webinar on accelerating Ukraine's critical infrastructure and showing very much cutting-edge research and training initiatives for all. Today, we have a terrific lineup of speakers, and two key ones in the first instance from Bridge Ukraine is Dr. Stergios-Aristoteles Mitoulis, who's Associate Professor in Engineering and Project Management at UCL, and founder of Metal Infrastructure and Bridge Ukraine. He's an expert in resilience, sustainability, and digitization of the built environment. So Dr. Stergios will be starting off and leading, and he's supported very closely with Dr. Sotirios Argyroudis, who's co-founder of Bridge Ukraine and associate professor at Brunel University, London. We're going to hear probably for about 10-15 minutes about the work they've been doing, which will be articulating the research findings and the use of research and techniques, and then very much also about the classes, etc., online ability to learn about how to become better engineers, and particularly relate to EuroCodes. We'll also be joined by Mr. Iannetta, who's head of engineering at Acrow Global, who very much deliver bridges and has worked with Bridge Ukraine and is currently working in Ukraine on bridge technologies, and Mr. Steve Rowan, who's Managing Director of Earth Marine Environmental Consultants, who very much assess for banks and for investors the validity and the qualifying projects. I think I've got that right. So without more ado, I'd very much like to hand over to Dr. Stergios-Aristoteles Mitoulis, and look forward. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Yeah, let me just share my screen. I hope you can see my screen.
All good.
Yeah. So thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm grateful to everyone who took the time out of their day today to attend this event. My name is Stergios Mitoulis, and I'm based at the Bartlett School of Sustainable Construction at University College London. I'm also the founder, as Ashley mentioned, of metainfrastructure.org and Bridge Ukraine. Both initiatives are dedicated to embedding resilience and sustainability into our structures, built environments, and cities. So today I will share with you the latest developments in research and training for the reconstruction of Ukraine's built environment, rooted in these principles of resilience and sustainability, and with the vision of creating a more equitable and inclusive future for Ukraine, its people, communities, and economy. In that case, cannot only recover, but truly thrive in the near future. So, rebuilding cities after conflict is not simply about replacing what has been lost. And this is our motto, this is our quote in Bridge Ukraine. Too often, you have probably realized that reconstruction is shaped primarily by political and economic interests and neglects equity, diversity, and inclusion, thereby compromising long-term resilience and sustainability of the built environment and the people. So post-war recovery must therefore break away from these traditional interest-driven patterns. Instead, in our opinion, in Bridge Ukraine's opinion, it should be guided by science-based multidisciplinary strategies that prioritize resilience, sustainability, and social justice. In the spirit of personal commitment, much like the article that you see here, that is published in the Journal of the Conversation by the deputy of the Bridge Ukraine group, Dr. Nadia Kopika, the idea behind the Bridge Ukraine initiative emerged from a deeply human story. One of my students, Marat Kodzaev, a Ukrainian national, found himself in February 2022 unable to return to the UK, and so he was at risk of missing out the graduation from his master's degree, and that was due to the outbreak of the war. So witnessing his struggle and the upheaval faced by so many Ukrainians, I realized that this was way more than just a distant crisis. It was right next to us. It was a call to leverage our engineering and academic resources to think about how we can help the people in Ukraine, the engineers in Ukraine, the policymakers in Ukraine to rebuild their critical infrastructure. Thus, Bridge Ukraine was born out of a shared mission at the time to turn a personal connection and individual challenge into a collective effort to foster resilience and hope. So connecting from the previous slide, and the context of the previous slide, Bridge Ukraine started with a clear aim to develop a framework for Ukraine's reconstruction. But as you will see, it quickly evolved into something much larger. Now, Bridge Ukraine is an alliance that goes well beyond the original goal and involves significant strands of both research, as you see here, on the reconstruction, as well as education, as you see at the bottom of my slide. It includes a strong capacity building program that we are now developing for Ukrainian professionals, engineers, and policymakers, and a broad network of international experts, as you see on the left-hand side. In short, Bridge Ukraine has become much bigger than the initial vision, branching out to multiple pathways of research and educational impact. So, building on the previous slide, which introduced the structure of Bridge Ukraine and its dual focus on research and education, this slide highlights the concrete milestones and achievements since the launch of Bridge Ukraine back in 2022, in February 2022. We can see here how the initiative quickly grew into a multi-million pound program, securing, as you will see in this slide, 1.9 million in funding, producing more than 20 publications and reaching more than 180,000 engagements. And that is the result, as you may understand, of incoming funding, capacity building projects, as well as our impact and the interactions with the Ministry for Development of Communities and Territories, with whom we have now signed a memorandum of understanding. Now, in this slide, we highlight the educational strand of Bridge Ukraine initiative, focusing on key performance indicators like our bilingual massive open online course. What is a massive open online course? It's an open resource that every Ukrainian, every engineer in Ukraine will be able to reach, learn, and then also they will also have the opportunity to get micro-credentials, which is something like micro-masters from our program. And so we are pleased to share that this effort is generously funded by a UK charity, though we cannot name them, but we are very, very grateful for their support. Now, one thing that I believe is very important here is that over 90% of the funding that we received, and this is around £625,000, is directly benefiting Ukrainians from the project. So that means the project manager, the teaching fellows, and the lecturers are all Ukrainians. We also engaged, as you see on the bottom left, with the Ministry of Education and Science in Ukraine. You can see here the meeting that we had with the Deputy Minister of Education, Mikhailo Winitsky, but we also engaged and co-developed now this program with the Ministry for Development of Communities and Territories in Ukraine, which was used to be called Ministry of Restoration. The program is designed with and for Ukrainians and Ukrainian academics, and they are not only participants, but we rather try to co-develop the knowledge and the future training with Ukrainian academics and policymakers. We continuously measure the impact carefully throughout this program, and we are hoping to celebrate our first graduates by the end of 2026, so next year. Now, here you can see the structure of our massive open online course. The title is, as you may have been expecting, Reconstructing Ukraine's Built Environment for Sustainable and Resilient Future. And this outlines here the course content, the interactive materials, the micro-credentials, the micro-masters that I mentioned before, and everything will happen through an openly available platform which is called FutureLearn. So they will be hosting our massive open online courses and CPDs, and we will be monitoring impact throughout the delivery of the course, together with other academics and policymakers. And we are also hoping that this massive open online course will give us the opportunity to develop a very dynamic and inclusive community of practice. So this is building on our prior expertise and experience on the development of massive open online courses on FutureLearn, and our roles as lecturers of the Institution of Civil Engineers, ensuring efficient delivery and maximize the impact for Ukraine's reconstruction and development of community of practice. Now, I will go to the research component of Bridge Ukraine. So this slide here encapsulates findings from our recent Nature Communications paper, which is co-authored with a top Ukrainian researcher, Dr. Igor Linkov. He works in the United States. The article is open to access, so please reach out to me if you want to read the article early. It's not online yet, but it's coming out next week. As shown in the plot, what you see here on the bottom right is that after a major infrastructure failure, like a bridge collapse, for example, in Ukraine, or a disruption of a bridge in Ukraine, this asset acts as a bottleneck in our cities, in our infrastructure systems. And the initial government or external donors' interventions can cause a short-term positive spike in local income, which you see here with the red line. But in reality, what we noted with our economic analysis of a city network was that such funding might not be available later on, and especially in Ukraine. And the initial potential boost that you see as a positive output is that this can be followed by a sudden decline, which means what you feel as a positive environment after something collapses and there is a lot of funding and a lot of support given to an area, this might cause a very abrupt, a very sudden decline of the local economy. So what you see on the top right is our real belief that critical infrastructure must be evaluated not only for its infrastructure integrity, but also for its broader geo-economic impact and the ripple effects that might not appear until years later. So this is something that we really need to take into account in Ukraine's reconstruction. This is another research that's been led by Dr. Nadia Kopika, a researcher of BridgeUkraine. In simple terms, what we try to do here is that we are using the power of satellite imagery to quickly understand damage to Ukraine's infrastructure. So if we identify damage quickly, we can make a smart and quick decision-making to help Ukraine rebuild more resiliently. This research has been published in the Automation and Construction, which is a high-impact journal, and it's openly available to Ukrainians and obviously to everyone that would like to read our article. Now, here you can see, as you may understand, this is not research that I am doing. There is a group behind it, and it's mainly Ukrainians who are doing this research, which is who are absolutely excellent, fantastic researchers to work with. Most of the colleagues that you see here are Ukrainians, except for my colleague Sotirios Argyroudis, who will now who is professor at Brunel University of London, and I will hand it over to him now to present the next part of our research. So after me covering the first part of infrastructure assessment and how education and research can help us accelerate infrastructure assessment, Sotirios will navigate with you through what we call resilience evaluation, which is looking at recovery measures and how we reduce reconstruction times and incorporating sustainability. So let me hand it over to Sotirios. Thank you very much. I'll answer any potential questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Stergios. I will now introduce some of the excellent research that is carried out by our talented team over the past 3 years. Stergios has already shown some examples. I will show some more specific examples from this research. So we are privileged to work with these researchers and to collaborate with Ukrainian universities. These people are really passionate about Ukraine's reconstruction. And as a proof of that, Dr. Nadia Kopika developed the first framework in the international literature, which introduces a systematic rating system for post-conflict reconstruction. We can see in this slide the framework. Traditionally, recovery strategies have concentrated on direct repair costs and structural integrity, often neglecting the wider socioeconomic, environmental, and resilience dimension of infrastructure recovery. In this framework, we addressed this gap by explicitly integrating both proactive and reactive measures, but also temporary measures, which are not always considered in conventional conflict resilience models. By combining economic, social, environmental, and resilience metrics into a unified prioritization system, and we can see here examples of these metrics, the system enables the evaluation of multiple recovery pathways. And this can be either immediate temporary solutions or long-term sustainable reconstruction. In doing so, the framework provides policymakers and engineers with holistic science-based tools to allocate resources strategically and balance short-term needs with long-term resilience. The framework is openly available in this paper at Transportation Research Part D. Now, in this slide, we demonstrate how our prioritization framework for bridge reconstruction can significantly enhance the resilience of road networks. In this example, all bridges along the river, so Bridge 1, Bridge 2, Bridge 3, and Bridge 4 are assumed damaged, while O1 to O4 are representing traffic origins, and D is the destination of the traffic. This analysis shows that the sequence of reconstruction is critical for mobility resilience. So we compare different sequences of reconstruction. So in this example, in this graph, the red path is historic first Bridge 4, then B3, B1, and B2, while the black restoration sequence follows a different order of reconstruction. By comparing these pathways, we see that following the optimized black sequence, it results to increased traffic capacity by more than 20% and a reduction of reconstruction cost by 30%, offering substantial value under budget constraints. This framework that I presented in the previous slide is not just theoretical. It has already been applied in a real case study west of Kiev, as we see here in this map, prioritizing the restoration of 4 damaged bridges along the Irpin River. These results can guide the Ministry of Communities and Territories in rebuilding damaged infrastructure, as well as insurance and investors for optimizing and increase the traffic capacity, reducing disruption, and increase certainty in Ukraine recovery, and doing so by simply reordering reconstruction priorities. Now, in the next 3 slides, I will briefly highlight a few more examples of other research topics from our group without going into detail. We don't have much time now, but this presentation is already available to you, and you can all have the links to the open access publications from this research. This slide is drawn from BridgeUkraine's contribution to the United Nations Development Programme and the group of 20 global flagship report on disaster and climate resilient infrastructure, where we argue that for more sustainable reconstruction of Ukrainian infrastructure, we demonstrate what is the finances needs and for this renovation and reconstruction. And this exercise was performed for all road and railway bridges in Ukraine. So we compare different adaptation strategies, conventional and sustainable strategies, and we presented the results in terms of investments as a function of the country's GDP. Another paper presents a recent work in collaboration with Professor Natalia Sarkovska, who is the Vice Chancellor of Lviv Polytechnic. In this research, we developed a novel model for recognizing road surface damage, such as potholes or cracks, and we did that based on images and videos using convolutional neural networks. This facilitates rapid damage recognition of road networks. And one more example, another research includes experiments in wind tunnel facilities conducted by Associate Professor Kristina Mironiuk. This research offers energy-efficient renovation solutions for modular housing in Ukraine using natural ventilation. I will finish this presentation with some key points and our vision as BridgeUkraine. So what we need is to develop advanced benchmarks for reconstruction prioritization, and we do that by using real use cases from Ukraine for optimizing decisions under financial resilience and sustainability constraints. So you are all welcome to contact us if you have use cases that we can include in our research, and also to contact us if you want to develop with us CPD and top modules as part of our Empower Ukraine educational program that Stergios has previously presented. We are also co-creating a practical science-based framework for resilient, sustainable and equitable reconstruction in Ukraine through participatory work with academics, ministries, donors, and we would like to extend this effort with your contribution and help. And finally, Bridge Ukraine supports ministries and policymakers in Ukraine and the UK with evidence-based guidance that aligns with EU standards and donor requirements. We would like also to engage more with insurance, investors and industry partners to translate our resilience research into financial and operational strategies that reduces risk and accelerate assistance and resilience. This is a list of our general publications where you have the links of the papers. And I will stop here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ashley, for the invitation. And in the link here, you can have access to our website and join us and register with Bridge Ukraine. So I think we can open up the discussion with everyone.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Stergios and Dr. Sotirios. Fantastic initiatives, really good. Just to say that we will be sharing this with anyone that's registered, so people can get this presentation, they can get the details from you, so that will be following up. And also, if you have questions, possibly put them in the chat that we can deal with later. I'm just going to introduce you now to Nick Iannetta, who is the head of engineering at Acrow Global. And Acrow are currently in Ukraine putting bridges in place. So Nick, look forward to hearing from you what you're doing, and also, you know, any kind of sense you have of relationship with Bridge Ukraine and the work that they're doing. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Ashley. Yes, as the largest, dedicated, most experienced modular bridge supplier in the world, Acrow has been very proud to support the ongoing reconstruction efforts in Ukraine. We're currently in the process of supplying somewhere in the region of 40 bridges for a mix of road and rail application into Ukraine to keep infrastructure performing and doing what it needs to do in terms of maintaining the economic balance in the region. One of the things, or a couple of things that we have appreciated, not just in Ukraine but anywhere in the world, is that the need to support infrastructure, as Stergios said, has to be real time. It has to be rapid and quick. The longer infrastructure is out of action, the harder the effect on and the harder the impact on the economy and the social well-being of the people in the region. So for that reason, we have over 2 kilometers of stock deployed strategically around the world and across UK, across Europe and North America, and made available for immediate deployment to Ukraine and anywhere else. We found that with Ukraine in particular, because it is in a conflict situation, we actually find that the prioritized needs of the infrastructure changes almost on a daily basis. And this is one of the benefits of the modular bridge systems that we offer. You can actually configure any bridge of any span in as little as about 26 different components. So as long as the authorities have sufficient quantities of each of those components in stock, they can make whatever bridge they like immediately. The designs are permanent bridges. People often think of these bridges as being temporary. They're not. They're actually permanent bridges. We simply add more componentry within the trusses to give them the structural resilience needed for long-term durability and fatigue requirements. So with that in mind, they are able to be removed, reconstituted, redeployed elsewhere if needs be. But they are a very high quality, climate resistant, real-time modular bridge solution.
Nick, may I ask, how do you apply them in country? So, for example, would this training system be helpful for you in terms of helping in Ukraine?
Very good question. Yes, it would very much. And the reason for that is that it is one thing to supply a bridge, but what we've done in Ukraine particularly is to give local engineers and local authorities the capability to design their own bridges as they need for any given span. So as part of that, it's not just about giving them the equipment, it's about empowering the end user with the design knowledge, the knowledge of the system and how it is built and how it is constructed and installed. As part of that process, we actually invited a large number of Ukrainian engineers to our factory in Livni, where we have a bridge academy, which enables hands-on training and use of our kit within our premises to enable them to know what the components look like, how they go together, how you actually launch a bridge with minimal plant requirements, and that with the ongoing remote support that we offer has enabled the Ukrainians to actually deploy bridges as and when they see fit, with minimal need for reach back, but the support is always there if it's needed.
So what we're looking at is the professor's framework that Ukraine can deploy the most effective application of bridges. For example, you pop the bridges in, and everyone's efficient. Yeah,
absolutely. One of the other benefits of a pre-engineered modular bridge is that you know upfront exactly what it looks like. So we've actually got 3D models to support cloud-based technology, so we can actually provide 3D models to make sure that the bridges will actually fit within the existing infrastructure and to enable the engineers in field to tie in the interfaces with what we supply and what is already there.
Nick, thank you very much. Is there something else you'd like to add, or you're quite happy to leave it there?
No, quite happy to leave it there for the moment, but of course, if anybody does have any questions, we're here, and pop them in the chat and we'll either answer them in person if I can, or take them offline and answer them if I can't on the spot.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'd like to come to Steve Rowan now, who's Managing Director of Earth and Marine Environmental Consultants. This is another part of the picture in the sense that what Steve does, he assesses the probability of return on investment, etc. And so when you go to the banks and get the funding, it'll be quite clear that obviously the projects that, say, Mitoulis and Stergios are putting together are likely to come about. So, Steve, are you here? Can we hear from you?
Yes, I am here. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you can all hear me. Yeah, I do have a few slides that I've prepared that might just help guide the discussion. Am I able to share my screen?
Yeah, should be.
Just give me 1 second. Can everybody see that? Can you see my
it's coming forward. Just a moment. It might appear suddenly. At the moment, it's blank.
Okay. Let's try again.
Yes, we're okay.
Okay, good, right. So hello, yes, I'm the Managing Director of Earth and Marine Environmental Consultants.
Nick, you've just muted yourself. Sorry, Steve, you just muted yourself.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me now. So I'm the managing director of Earth and Marine Environmental Consultants, and we're a consultancy that has worked on numerous infrastructure projects in post-conflict zones, in emerging markets, and our primary client base, or the primary driver for our work, is the international finance community. Now, typically for large infrastructure projects, there will be a funding syndicate, but there'll also be an export credit agency that provides export credit guarantees for those projects, and they typically mandate that there is some form of environmental and social appraisal and consideration in the determination of the project and whether they're going to fund the project. And that's where most of our work has been for the last 15 years since we formed the. So we've worked on a range of projects, including power stations, distribution networks, substations, ports and harbours, industrial infrastructure, roads and bridges, urban development, housing, etc. So in any large infrastructure project that's drawing international finance, basically, but a large section of that loan activity is around primary infrastructure and utilities. That would be transportation and logistics, energy and water. For some reason, my slides aren't advancing. Okay. So what typically happens is a project will go through, initially the finance community involved in a project will go through a screening exercise and decide whether the project is going to be a category A, B or C project in accordance with OECD common approaches. Category A are the highest impact projects. These are very large scale infrastructure projects. Category B are still impactful, but of a smaller scale. And category C are deemed to be minimal and no adverse environmental impact. So they typically get filtered out as not requiring any further assessment. So the main difference between category A and category B projects is they both require an environmental social impact assessment as part of the funding decision-making process. But a category A project will also require an additional review by an independent consultant that wasn't involved in the ESIA, to basically confirm the veracity of the ESIA and to develop an environmental social action plan to ensure that all the project stakeholders deliver an appropriate sustainable project that meets the funders' expectations. So the ESIA process itself, and this would apply to any project that falls into either category A or B. So initially there's a scoping exercise which basically sets out how the ESIA will be performed, what kind of things will be considered, what will be scoped out, what will be scoped in, who will be consulted, who are the key stakeholders. So in a bridge context, for example, if there's a choice of locations for bridges that can connect communities, then those communities and the people representing those communities become stakeholders in the process. They need to be aware of the project, they need to have a say in the environmental and social considerations of the project. We then undertake baseline surveys because we're trying to identify what's the baseline condition, what would happen both environmentally and socially if this project doesn't take place, if this bridge isn't built or this power station isn't built, what will happen to the baseline conditions. And then that effectively sets the scene for the impact assessment. And the impact assessment is designed to say what will happen to those baseline conditions as a result of the project. Where there are significant impacts, then there's a requirement for an environmental social action plan that sets out how those impacts will be mitigated and how the project will be managed in such a way that the benefits are maximized, but the impacts are minimized or preferably mitigated altogether. And the international finance community will expect any project to be measured against a number of standards, but in particular the Equator Principles, the IFC performance standards and World Bank EHS guidelines. They're always mandatory in these processes, but there's also an expectation that the project will meet national legislation, which may require its own kind of impact assessment. Normally, an ESHA for international finance purposes is more robust and covers all the bases that would be expected by the local legislation, but not always. Sometimes there are peculiarities, or there's a slightly different process. So that has to be taken into account. And some lenders, some ECAs also have their own very specific requirements. In terms of performance standards, then they basically fall down to the Equator Principles and the IFC performance standards, and they cover a whole range of things. So it's not just about conventional environmental impacts like noise, dust, pollution, etc. It's also about labour and working conditions. It's about whether there's been displacement of persons, whether there's been disruption of livelihood, whether stakeholders have been appropriately engaged, whether there are appropriate grievance mechanisms in place, whether climate change resilience has been assessed. So it's a very comprehensive range of impact scenarios that need to be considered, and the finance community expects all of these things to be fully assessed and be part of the decision process for the financing. And then this is a final summary slide, really. So in our experience, having undertaken many of these projects for a whole range of funding institutions and export credit agencies from across Europe and Asia, the key areas of concern, the things that always seem to come up as common areas of concern, are any projects that displace persons from the site. Maybe maybe there's somebody living there. Even if it's an illegal settlement, it still has to be dealt with as if that person is living there and has a right to live there, and they have to be compensated or provided with alternative sites. If there's disruption of economic activity and livelihoods, and again, in a bridge building context, for example, how communities are connected, how the flow of goods and services is affected either positively or negatively by the presence or absence of a bridge. These kind of things need to be considered. Whether the construction activities and the land take will remove habitat or cause some biodiversity damage. A very important one is lack of adequate environmental and social management plans, and especially the operators, the client who eventually takes over the asset. What normally happens is the EPC contractors and the constructors have pretty good management systems in place. They have health and safety management systems, they have waste management plans, they have traffic management plans, etc. When the asset is then handed over to the client, whichever ministry or infrastructure body it is, they typically don't have those plans and don't have those controls in place. And that is a particular area of concern for the finance community. And also the other big area of concern is climate change impacts and resilience, both in terms of how the project can impact climate change issues. So, for example, the carbon density of the project, where the construction materials come from, whether secondary materials are being reused, etc., but also the resilience of the project to climate change. Again, in a bridge context, has periodic intense flooding being considered, has the dynamics of the river system being considered. It may be a system that has a certain flow rate and a certain flood characteristics at the moment, but with climate change that could become more severe. It could be affect a larger area. So there's an expectation that the project has considered these impacts as well. And what all of these effectively equate to is a delay in funding. So the more that these potential issues can be dealt with, considered and mitigated, the easier the flow of funding and the quicker the flow of funding to enable a project to go ahead. Well, I've seen many projects now held up, and not because the project was bad or because there's a significant amount of damage anticipated, but simply because some of these issues haven't been adequately assessed and dealt with. And so that would be my main message, really, is that there's a sufficient amount of effort and consideration of these types of issues at the front end of a project, in the design process and in the implementation plan, and that just aids the whole funding mechanism and access to funds. So that's pretty much my message for this presentation. Hopefully that made sense.
Steve, thank you very much indeed. It's great to know the mindset of the funders and what they require. And just pinning it back to Bridge Ukraine, presumably the data and the frameworks and the work they're doing will enable that process to be sped up. Will you be, do you work with them at the moment?
No, so our involvement is in Ukraine at the moment is still early days. So we're working with groups like the Association of Sustainable Development Experts to develop management plans, etc. But in terms of on the ground specific projects, it's still early days, because the funding community that they are talking to us and they are saying, "Are you prepared for Ukraine? Because we've got funds available and we will be deploying them." So the interest is there, but the flow of projects at the moment, understandably, is still quite muted, because there's always a risk of implementing a project that then becomes damaged again.
I understand.
It's certainly been a theme in the energy industry in particular. There is concern about reconstructing energy plants only for them to then be destroyed the following month.
Absolutely. But in terms of the work that's being done by Bridge Ukraine, is that something that will aid things when the money starts coming, which hopefully before too long we'll have some sort of ceasefire?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, the more discussion, the more collaboration, and the more there is this, research and development and early consideration of these issues, the better. The better for everyone, the better for the projects, the better for the finance syndicates, etc. So yeah, I think this is a very valuable initiative and access. And of course, what's been mentioned a few times here is is also that. Engaging with the local stakeholders and capacity building, with knowledge transfer, that's a very important part of the process. It's not, it's not sustainable in itself to just keep parachuting experts in all the time to do things, and as on a project by project basis. Eventually, the nation state needs to be capable of doing all of these things themselves to the same standard that the international community would have provided. So initiatives like this, I think, are very important.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Stergios, hello there.
Thank you. Yes, Steve, I've been listening what you're saying, and I was very interested in your presentation. One of the things that we systematically do in Bridge Ukraine is that we try to build benchmarks. So we try to build use cases where we can demonstrate the importance and the positive impact of including all these co-benefits in our design. So not only technical design parameters, which has to do with quantity of materials, what kind of design guidelines we're using, etc., but also what you have shown in your presentation. So my question is, would you be interested, is it part of your business model or how to grow? Would you be interested to co-develop with us a benchmark in Ukraine? Say, for example, we are given by the Ministry of Territories, the Ministry of Infrastructure in Ukraine, a settlement, and we're being asked to prioritize reconstruction. Would you be interested? Would it be part of your business model to be involved in such a use case, so we can demonstrate the project to them of how more equitable reconstruction looks like, and what is the kind of mechanism, what is the kind of international standards and policies that we should be aligning to?
Well, the quick answer to that is yes. I mean, I spend a lot of my time behind the scenes, outside of a specific project, trying to develop, streamlined ways of moving projects forward and collaboration and bringing together useful, usable data. And benchmarking is very important, because you have to bear in mind that a lot of the funders are sat in offices in other parts of the world that have never visited Ukraine, will never visit Ukraine, and don't see the projects that they're funding. They only see the paperwork that comes from the project. And so anything we can do to help them understand the situation, to show them comparators and benchmarks, etc., is very helpful. And as an organization, we're always happy to collaborate on these wider initiatives that help move the knowledge base forward and make the whole process quicker for everyone, because we all have a vested interest in seeing these projects come to fruition sooner rather than later, and also devoting energy to the right subjects and to the right themes, rather than devoting energy to peripheral things that aren't really significant. And that is one of the problems. Sometimes a funding community can get fixated on an issue that isn't on the ground, isn't actually a really significant issue. So anything that helps in terms of collaboration, networking, development of ideas and themes, we're always happy to collaborate on such things.
Thank you very much. Stergios, do you want to say anything else?
No, that's very good to know. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. So one of the things that we can do in the near future is that we can contact you and see how we can build these benchmarks. I mean, we have benchmarks mainly centered around resilience and sustainability of the built environment, but I understand that your approaches involve more parameters. It's a rating system and potentially an approach that involves international standards. So we would like to learn a little bit more about this, and we would like to start building a benchmark based on a collaboration. So we will contact you very soon, and we will open the discussion around these benchmarks.
Okay,
Sounds
good. I look
terrific.
forward to that.
Fantastic. Could I just ask maybe Stergios or Sotirios, you mentioned you're working with the education department and also the communities development in Ukraine. I mean, do you have political backing for the parameters that you're putting forward, shifting the framework, maybe the way they think about deploying infrastructure?
So the short answer is yes, we do. So we were actually invited by the Deputy Prime Minister to an event that was organized a couple of years ago from the Royal Society, the Royal Society. And we have met the Deputy Minister of Education, as I mentioned in my presentation, and we also have the intention to meet more people from the education, from universities. For example, we're meeting with vice chancellors this coming December in Lviv. So I would say yes, we do have backing. Obviously, Ukraine is a very large country. This doesn't mean that all ministers and all decision makers and policy makers in the country are have the same views. But I'm feeling that we're producing something very positive, both from a research point of view and an educational point of view. So I believe there is no reason why we shouldn't be continuing having the backing from the country and from the politicians and the education system in Ukraine.
I think to take this further, a lot of what you're doing is universally applicable, isn't it, to potentially conflict economies or catch-up economies. For example, Iraq or maybe Syria could benefit from some of this.
It is, yes. So we believe that our use cases are fully replicable. For example, just to mention a couple of cases, the impact of single points of failure on on cascading effects at the system level that I presented before is fully replicable case study to other countries that are in conflict, or other countries that try to recover after major disasters like Iraq or Turkey after the major earthquake. So there is replication studies. Of course, the framework has to be tailored to take into account what Steve and what Nick mentioned before, local design guidelines and requirements of external donors. But the rationale and the technicalities and the design and the approach is very similar and fully replicable.
Thank you. I think probably we're coming to an end. If I could maybe ask each of you if there's something you'd like to finish off in summary that you'd like to convey. I mean, Nick, would you like to say anything particular? The people with a thought?
Yes, I would. It's sad to see the continuing conflicts happening in Ukraine. I think we all feel the same way in that respect. But we are very proud to continue supporting the people of Ukraine in their efforts to rebuild towards a better tomorrow.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I'd echo those thoughts, and I think there is a huge amount of goodwill and interest in the international community to assist Ukraine to repair and grow from the damage of the war. and collaboration, sharing of information, development of these stakeholder networks is very important, and the access to information and flow of information is very, very critical. So I applaud this initiative and similar initiatives, and I think it's it bodes well for the future, and hopefully the reconstruction can start or accelerate sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Stergios, you've got your hand up.
Yes, one last comment, because I haven't commented on Nick's presentation before. So some thoughts whilst Nick was presenting and sharing insights of what their business is in Ukraine. There is a huge incentive, obviously, to reuse rubble. I know that bridges require high quality material, so it might not be an ideal material, but maybe for secondary bridges, maybe we can use rubble. One thing. The other thing is we are developing, I don't know if you noticed by the second module that we're developing in the framework of Bridge Ukraine, it's on the design of bridges to EuroCodes and British standards. Well, it's, as you know, Nick, probably better than us, is EuroCodes and British standards are now fully aligned. So the question is whether the Ukrainian engineers are getting this knowledge or not, and if there is something that we can do as Bridge Ukraine to help you strengthen this capacity building of Ukrainian engineers. I mean, we would be very happy to receive input from you and co-develop the bridge design module that we are currently developing. This has been developed by Ukrainian Marat Kodjaev. He's a senior consultant in the UK, so maybe it makes sense to arrange a meeting. Third and last point, and I will stop here, is the how much of these ideas have been presented in Ukraine, because, as I said, we're going to be visiting Ukraine in December. So we would very much like to, have some slides from Nick, for example, to present these solutions and say, well, here you go. These are some prefabricated solutions. You don't even have to design them. You pretty much like transfer these sections from, I don't know, from a factory you can assemble on site. Is this a solution, or is it something that we need to build in Ukraine? A manufacturing yard that will be producing prefabricated bridge components, which can then very quickly, in an accelerated way, we can assemble on site, connect, and replace existing bridges. I will stop here, and I would also like to take the opportunity to thank Ashley and the team at the UBBC for organizing this fantastic event. And I would very much like to meet again in the future and see how all these endeavors have developed over the years.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stergios. I probably want to ask more questions, but Sotirios, would you like to say anything?
Yes, just to say that reconstruction in post-conflict countries needs a multidisciplinary collaboration and cross-sectoral synergies. That's what we are doing in Bridge Ukraine, to bring together experts from different disciplines, engineering, environmental, or social sciences, and include this in our frameworks. Thank you for bringing also us together here today. I see in the chat people writing about their expertise, for example, on social measures, or environmental governance, economic impacts, and we are happy to discuss and collaborate on that. For example, interdependencies between infrastructure is very important, and follow up on Steve's presentation. In order to prioritize reconstruction, it's important to assess critical interdependencies between, for example, hospitals and roads, or energy infrastructure, hospital, schools, in order to understand which are the priorities, which are the vulnerable points in the system, and in this way inform decision making.
Thank you very much. I think priority is going to be very important. And you may have noted we had 35 Ukrainian mayors over in June. So if they're only coming over again, I think it'd be very good to get the professors in front of them to talk about frameworks and things. Just to flag up a couple of things that are happening with Ukraine Business. We have very interesting seminar on the 8th of September with CMS, Piraeus Bank and Chesterfield Insurance on doing business and investing in Ukraine. So it's a lot of expertise there. I'll tell you, if you're wishing to do that, how you can do it and the best way to do it. Also, we expect to have a visit to Kyiv in the autumn, which we're looking forward to, and maybe perhaps we could bring you along, Stergios. That would be helpful, and hopefully meet some politicians and things. And also, we hope to have a reception in late October or thereabouts. So those things going on, plus our newsletter. We're always open to visiting MPs, businesses and universities. So do let us know if you're over in London or even the rest of the UK and would like to link up. And obviously recognizing that there are a lot of Ukrainian universities on here, and you're very welcome, and we hope things will get better for you fairly soon. And thank also the UBBC members, businesses, all the educators and government officials who also signed up to this. We shall be sharing this, and I think it's been incredibly valuable. Thank you very much to all our presenters and all of you listening. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you, Sotirios. Thank you, Stergios. Thank you, Nick. And thank you, Steve. See you soon.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.